Good morning. I'm Rochelle Coulee, and I'm here with author Jacquelyn Weis. And we're going to be interviewing, and she'll be doing some reading with us. And she's the new author of Healing the Survivors. Welcome, Jacquelyn.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who is joining. It's such a pleasure to be with you guys. I'm so excited about this release, and I've put my heart and soul into this book, and I hope that it will be able to influence you guys the way it did. Thank you for joining me.
So what's the schedule today? We're going to have you do a reading.
So today we'll do a reading. If you guys want to comment some questions below, go ahead and do so, because we'll do a little Q&A after I do a reading, and then we'll do a little discussion as well.
Sweet. What are we going to start with?
I guess we could start with the reading.
No, I mean chapters.
Oh, so I'm going to read chapter 1 of my book. This part is more about how to start your healing and where to begin when you are on your journey and you're not sure where to go. So this chapter is more of forgiveness. So I'm going to go ahead and read that for you guys. When we prepare for our healing journey, the first step is to allow forgiveness into our hearts. I used to blame myself for my assault. I would think things like, it's my fault. I shouldn't have gone to the party. I should have gone home when I had the chance. The anger inside me consumed me, launching me into a negative spiral, trying to figure out what I did wrong and why someone would do this to me. Maybe you feel like me. Maybe you are blaming yourself. I know how it feels, and I want you to know it's not your fault. We often blame ourselves for our trauma. We reflect and try to convince ourselves, I deserved it. I asked for it. It's real. It's raw. The guilt weighs heavily on us and often causes us to lose sleep at night trying to figure out what we did wrong. Why do we do that to ourselves? I realize it's easier to blame ourselves than to think that someone could hurt us. By trying to solve unanswerable questions, it leaves us in more pain. We're left grasping to understand, desperate for a comforting answer to why someone would betray us. So we end up with the conclusion, it must have been my fault. During the first few months after my assault, I lived in a deep state of depression. At times, my greatest accomplishment was getting out of bed and washing my hair. I felt like a child, weak, vulnerable, exposed. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. When I tried to make sense of everything that happened, I completely fell apart. Dire thoughts consumed me, and I constantly blamed myself for what happened. I truly believed it was my fault, as though I did it to myself. My mind became a prison. I was trapped within because I didn't know how to shut off my thoughts. Our post-trauma instinct is to search for an answer. It's part of our body's fight or flight mode. Neither fight nor flight was successful, so what happened? Our mind races, replaying the scene nonstop to see if we missed something important that would somehow change our fate. We analyze every scenario. What if I hadn't gone? What if I had stayed home? What if I wasn't alone? Then the mirror blasts accusations again. Maybe I was wearing the wrong clothes. I probably gave the wrong impression. Maybe I didn't say no loud enough. It's all a coping mechanism, all different versions of what could I have done to save myself from that situation, searching for a way to normalize our experience and make it okay. A study by Duke University cited 62% of rape survivors blame themselves for their attack. Guilt and shame are common reactions survivors face. Because of the misconceptions about rape, we often blame ourselves, doubt our judgment, or wonder if we're responsible. In some way, feeling like we are responsible and that it was our fault gives us a sense of control, when in reality, we weren't in control of that moment, and we have to accept that. I spent a lot of time feeling that, but this was the truth. It didn't serve me well. If we don't have control, we feel unsafe. Being unsafe means we will never be protected again. It changes us. We don't want to live in fear. We want to believe there is still hope. When I was going through my healing journey of overcoming my sexual abuse, I was searching for ways to cope from my trauma. I was 14 years old when the first time happened, and I would constantly go back into the situation and find some type of loophole to put the blame on myself. It was like I was watching this never-ending horror movie. My uncontrollable thoughts constantly screamed, "It's your fault. You wanted it. You chose to go to the party." The sad thing was, I believed it. The downward spiral led me to curling up in a ball and punching myself in the head. I absolutely hated myself, and I felt that I was the one to blame. I share my experiences because I want you to learn from them. Hopefully, before you get to that point as well. What I did was damaging. One situation stripped my self-esteem, and I drowned my thoughts with self-inflicted habits as a result. These things only caused me more pain, and it ruined my relationships and friendships. I didn't know how to exist anymore, and I wanted it all to end. When we start to normalize our trauma, self-blame takes over because we are trying to cope, but this often causes us more harm. We keep putting ourselves in the situation over and over again to try to undo the past, but what happened in the past can't be changed. So analyzing this won't help you. It's time to shift your energy elsewhere. When we try to cope with our trauma, we play mind games that don't end well. Our made-up reasoning for why everything happened allows us to believe we're finding closure, but really it's blaming ourselves that holds us back from the healing. As we heal, we have to be careful with who we are blaming in this situation. And if you're here, it's probably yourself. Allow yourself to let go of the blame. In order to heal, we must first forgive. And sometimes that person we must forgive is ourselves. When we start to feel like everything that happened to you is your fault, I want you to journal about why you feel that way and what you would say to a friend if you were in your situation. Let those words of grace release you from your trauma. Let me speak these very important words to you. You did nothing wrong. It wasn't your fault. I believe in you. Please read these words over and over again. Now it's your turn to believe it. Constantly remind yourself that this wasn't your fault and your assaulter doesn't have power over you. You have the power within to heal and move forward. It all begins when the decision to do so. I'll take a break.
Okay. May you see your book. So before we get, I'd like you to, if you see the cover, what does the red hand symbolize?
So in my native culture, 4 of 5 women are raped, and there is a whole movement for the missing indigenous women from being raped and from domestic violence situations. So this handprint represents the missing indigenous women, for the voices that aren't heard, and for the women and men who haven't been able to share their story and their families who aren't able to find them and talk about what's happened to their children. And so it also resembles when I wasn't able to share my voice because I was too afraid to speak up. But really, when I didn't speak up about what was happening to me, it only was more damaging. So to me, that resembles the power of my voice.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that if someone doesn't understand the symbolism, it could be frightening and what that means. And also historically, like in indigenous culture, the hand, there was always symbolisms when someone went out as a warrior, someone who, it was also a clan, the prince. So this is not a new thing in culture. This is quite old, doing something like this, but this represents exactly what you're talking about for today. You also, it says healing the survivors, 8 steps to the whole self-healing. And I thought it was interesting. The first thing in the chapter, you're talking about forgiveness, yourself. Can you talk? Why are we inclined to blame ourselves for something that happens to us when it is so clear it's that person, right, who's doing the harm, but yet we want to blame ourselves? What's that about?
So what that is it's because it's a shift of perspective. It's so hard to try to understand why someone would do that to us. It's hard to try to cope with it. And so our way of trying to cope with it on a healthy level is to reflect back onto us. Because one, we're so afraid, we're in shock, we're panicking, we're trying to really understand what's going on with us. And so allowing us to say it was my fault would make it so much easier to try to understand why someone would do such a horrible thing to me. And others feel like that too. But then also we live in a society which is on its way to changing. But we were always told like it's the victim's fault. Like no one sets, like even in our systems, we don't set up women and men who have gone through abuse for success. It's more of for an assault or for that person who did the assaulting. So we live in that world where it is the victim's fault, and it's harder to prove that someone is guilty rather than not guilty. And so really it's with that incorporating our own personal self-doubt, blame. We have a society that doesn't back us up even in that scenario.
Right. And historically, when we go back into Europe, and then that didn't really exist here on this continent and on this land of the people. It was well balanced. And if there was something that happened, they were quickly taken out of the society and had to earn their way back in. Or sometimes it could have been drastic. In some coastal tribes, it was to bury them in the sand. So it's a very serious thing. So then no one's going to behave in that way. But now this is learned behavior. It's coming from, it's an illness that has to be discussed. And I don't understand why we want to blame ourselves first. But like you said, you can't comprehend any other reason. What did I do? So, I think that's the main thing is you'd also then go from there to healing the survivors in overcoming anger. And want to talk about overcoming anger? Or you want to read it?
Let's read that section. Okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be upset over what happened to you. It may feel like everything was stolen and ripped away, leaving you empty and broken. You may feel angry with the person who hurt you, angry for not being protected, and angry for being assaulted, manipulated, and abused. I used to be so angry that I would end up screaming into the distance because I don't understand why this happened to me. Maybe you feel this way right now. Own your anger. Just don't stay angry for too long because it will end up controlling your life. Anger is a tricky emotion that we all feel. It's the way we process the trauma that we have faced. We often linger too long in this emotion, and it ends up causing us more pain and sorrow in the long run. When we are on a healing journey, we must truly heal at each step in order to move forward. Ask yourself, what is holding me back from healing at this moment? What is the emotion you are currently feeling in this moment? Maybe it's more than one, like hatred, anger, betrayal, forlorn, or bitterness. That was how I felt. Did you know that hatred and anger are two of the most prevalent emotions that prevent us from truly healing? No matter who you're angry with, It could be the person that harmed you. It might be your family or maybe yourself. If you don't take care of it, it will block you from the next steps. When we are angry, it gives that person power over us. There would be moments when I was so angry, all I could do was curl up in a ball at night, crying, screaming, and yelling. I wanted to punch something. I wanted him to know how I felt. I wanted him to know how that he shattered my world and that I was completely broken. Those reactions did more damage to me than to him. He will never understand what he did and how it could affect me for the rest of my life. At 14 years old, I turned to self-harm. The anger spurred so much hatred that in an effort to cope, I drank, inflicted pain on myself, and entertained suicidal thoughts. I was desperate to escape. I wanted to die, and at times I came close to taking my own life. It was awful. It was hard, and I know it weighed heavily on my relationships and family. It weighed heavily on me as well. I felt every single day for almost a year. My life felt like it was crashing around me. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to go and punch someone. I wanted to just let go of all the anger, but I didn't know how. I didn't know there was a right way, but I didn't want this person to have control over me, and I wanted to move forward. It's a heartbreaking moment. It feels like we are gasping for air, just wanting someone to feel and hurt just like we do. We get stuck disintegrating, watching the pieces of our life fall apart, instead allowing that anger within you to move you, not to take your power away. There was a breakthrough moment when I was tired of being angry and hurt. I didn't want to feel that way anymore. You probably won't or don't want to be stuck like this either. I don't know where you're at on your healing journey, and I don't know if you're feeling exactly the way I felt or not. The suffering, depression, crippling post-traumatic stress disorder, the sleepless nights of replaying the scene in your mind, shutting down, isolating yourself from others, scared to go out into the world. If any of this is familiar to you, this is why I want to help you continue through the next steps. If you're ready to heal and you want to reclaim your power, you have to let go of the anger. When we are angry with that person, it blocks true healing from taking place. I was pissed off, I was hurt, and I felt unable to love or trust anyone. One day, I woke up and decided I could no longer let my anger control me. I chose instead to allow my anger to push me forward. Oftentimes, our anger traps us from moving forward because it becomes a barrier between our happiness and us. When I decided to no longer be angry, I had to look within myself, forgive myself, and allow myself to breathe through it. I know it takes time, but one thing I realized was once I let go of my anger, that's when I started to see a shift within me. It allowed some of the bitterness to seep out. When we are searching for a way to cope, anger is the first thing that needs to be moved out of the way. Did you know, on a frequency scale, anger is the lowest vibration? The map of consciousness explains how emotions vibrate at a certain frequency. Frequencies affect your thoughts, health, emotions, and belief systems. Nikola Tesla states, if you want to find the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So if you are in a low vibrational frequency, that is where you will stay. I want you to think about anger as a frequency. If you are constantly angry, you will stay angry, and it will begin to attract depression, shame, and guilt. Our every thought, belief, emotion, and action as we consume on a daily basis creates the overall frequency of our bodies. This frequency is then sent out like a radio tower and brought back to you like a boomerang. Frequencies are energetic waves that stimulate our brain, which sends out frequency into our bodies. Whatever you consume affects you physically, mentally, and spiritually. When you embark on the healing journey, especially on an energetic level, You are constantly releasing the lower vibrational frequencies that make up your baseline energetic frequency. As you release these energies, it raises your vibrational energy. It will naturally attract positive experiences like love, gratitude, joy, and peace, which all vibrate at the highest frequency. When you raise your vibration, it helps your body get into alignment with what feels good and what you desire. When you are in alignment with these things and the energies that were blocking you are no longer there, you are able to find freedom and clarity. Anger attracts more pain. It attracts depression, anxiety, and heartache, even more panic attacks. Once you decide you are done with the anger, you will release that anger and hatred inside of you. You are no longer angry with yourself or the world or the person. You will feel stronger because when you let go of the anger, you will receive bits of power again. We deserve to take our power and strength back. We are bigger than that. We are powerful. Don't give them the advantage that takes away your power and your strength. Don't be angry. Be disappointed. Be sad. Those are okay to feel. Just let go of the anger, because when you do, you'll feel that burning desire and a flicker of light inside of you that says, yes, it's time. I'm ready to move forward.
That's beautiful. So, Jacquelyn, so there's the 8 steps to whole self-healing. How does your book work? Can I go from one chapter and then maybe go to the middle, or do I need to go in sequence? And how does it help me by reading it? You have ideas and journaling through the book too.
Mm-hmm. So I would say start at the very beginning, because it is a process. And the way I wrote it was based off of what I had to go through. And I kept going into these loopholes where I would be at the very beginning again because I didn't do it the right way. And so I wrote this, and I actually meditated on how this was supposed to be set up to really help people heal. Mm-hmm. And so I would start at the very beginning and then move through each chapter. But take your time with each chapter too. It's not a book that you're just supposed to read in one day, because in here, I have affirmations, I have exercises, I have journal entries for you to do, so you can really dig in deep for yourself so you can heal and move forward. So take each chapter at a time, and then actually do the things that I'm saying to do, because it is something that really helped me, and then it's helped my clients as well. When we implement these things.
Okay. So, and also there is no time, right? It could be years, mm-hmm. or it could be, I don't know. I've seen you work with a client one time, and this happened to them, and that day you were able to release that energy. Mm-hmm. It was beautiful. So, but it is important to recognize these emotions, right? And to go through these things. So, Jacquelyn, one of our viewers, they want to know, how do you feel? And we do need to talk about this. How do you feel about this accomplishment? I mean, you're 23 years old today. Happy birthday. Thank you. And wrote a book. And how does that feel? And what advice do you have for new authors and entrepreneurs?
So I feel really excited, but then at the same time, I'm kind of shocked that this is happening, because I didn't realize this was going to happen. I didn't know that I was going to become an author, and now a best-selling author. But it's just an amazing experience for me, because I know my story is helping so many people. I've already gotten a lot of comments back on how this book is helping them. And so it's just, that's what I wanted. That was my whole reason for writing this book, was if I could save or help one person who's gone through what I've gone through, and that they would feel empowered. That was the only reason why I wanted to write this book.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. It feels amazing to have this happening and to know that it's going to affect so many people's lives, because if one light's flickered within someone else, their story will go and impact someone else.
Yeah.
And that will always trickle down.
So I think there's so many stories out there. Everyone has a voice, and I think it's important that we all come out and talk about it. And one thing I do like about the book is that you're not going, we all know what happened, and you're not going through the pictures of, you're not telling us anything in detail. You're acknowledging, we all know from your story that, okay, this happened, but it's not something someone's going to say, oh my gosh, I have to read that. It's going to take me through the whole thing again. You don't do that at all in this book. You're just like, okay, here's what happened, and now let's move on. And why did you set it up like that?
It's because I know what it's like to have people ask me questions about it. And how traumatic that is, even when you've done the healing, but to keep reliving it over, it keeps you in that space of your trauma. And so in my eyes, this is more of a book that you're going to pick up after it's happened. So now you're sitting there and you don't know what's next. And so I wanted to write as if I was in that space of where am I? And so the reason why I wrote it was that because I know there's people who are going to read this and their traumas like really hard. And I didn't want them to have to, one, not compare, because I believe trauma is trauma and we shouldn't compare our trauma to each other. But then it also feels like this overshadowing of, well, I'm not going through that, so then this doesn't relate to me, where I want to be able to impact anyone. It doesn't have to be anyone, or it doesn't have to be someone who's going through that. It could be someone that's been in an abusive relationship, someone who's battling just self-hatred. It could be anything. So I wrote it in a way where my story is still there, but where it's more of an empowerment.
To help anybody who has had difficulties throughout their lives, that it could impact them and help them, give them tools how to heal. That's great. And also with that, then, I think it's amazing that you are brave enough to tell the story. A lot of us, are told not to say anything, and we don't say anything. Or we get older, like myself, and it took me a while to finally say something. And so I think it's a cycle. Can you talk about that? And if it was a perfect world, or a world that you can make an impact, what would you see in the future for all of us that have been in this situation?
I would see everyone like full of empowerment, owning their story, and like not as like a label, but more of a way to share your heart with someone else who is going through it. I think that if we really allowed ourselves to heal properly, we'd be able to empower other people. And I know from even generational, like historical trauma, like our whole entire family has been raped. And to know that if I was able to share my experience with someone and they know and it happened to them, then we already created this community where you feel safe. And that's what I had, luckily, is I had a community already ready there for me to talk about it. So if we own our story, we heal, then and we share our story, we don't know who's going through it or has gone through it. So then we'd all be embracing each other and would be this community of empowerment. And I believe like the statistics would go down because everyone's stepping out, and abusers are going to be afraid of being called out because everyone's owning their stuff now.
Yes. And I think it's a beautiful book for even if maybe you didn't go through this kind of trauma, but because of the way you've written it, it helps someone that hasn't gone through that have compassion, but help someone because it's pretty low statistic wise. What is it like? 3 out of 5 women and men, can't forget our men, have been abused in that way. And so you're going to eventually, come across someone and you will have compassion. And if you will be able to help them through the steps through Jacquelyn's book. And so with that, could you talk about, I guess it's meant to be talk about raise your vibration, and what does that mean?
So raising our vibration means that when we are in a low energy space, so our thoughts, our memories are consuming us. We have a lot of abusive thoughts. What happens is our body holds onto it. And that's why we keep going in that cycle. And so when we do raise our vibration, and vibration is just a frequency scale of the way your molecules in your body are vibrating at a certain rate. If you think of a piano scale, the highest C is like one of the highest vibrations. And so if you even play that note, it's very calming. Instead of the low notes, like an F sharp, it's a low note. So it's not going to raise you. And so when we go through trauma, our body's holding on to it, storing it. And then we stay at that level. And so when you try to embrace love and happiness, our body just rejects it already. So we're not able to accept it or feel it. And sometimes it makes us even more depressed when we're trying to experience happiness, depending on where you're at. And so when you raise your vibration through connecting with the earth, learning some type of art, listening to sound bowl meditations, meditating, what it does is it's already moving those frequencies, those molecules in your body. And now it's slowing down at a more slow pace that's natural to your body. And so then it's easier to cope with anxiety or PTSD because your body is in that slow neutral state. And so when we raise our vibration, and allows us to let go of those things, but it also helps us heal. And we forget that in order to heal, to move forward, those things need to come out. They need to be released and let go of. But oftentimes we shove them way too down where, it's 60 years later and you're having even worse symptoms or things that are contributing. And so the reason why it goes from forgiveness to raising your vibration is because when you move through that motion, it makes everything else in the book or in life easier just because you're now taking it on at a different state. Even if you're thinking mindset, it's already changing because of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Also, I'm like reading here. You want to talk, they still want to know also, how can you encourage other people to write a book? What's that step like? And what are the steps?
To write a book, you just have to start writing it. Okay. So really it's like my whole time I was going through my experience, I was journaling. And so that was kind of like my first insight. But even when I would journal, it was funny because I would be in like that depressed state. And then on the next page, it was like a really happy, enlightening, like, you got this type of thing. And then I'd go back. And so it's kind of like, just let it flow naturally. There's different ways to write it. I remember in my process, I would be talking into my phone, recording myself. I'd be having conversations with you and just writing everything as we discussed a topic. And I'd be like, oh, that's a good idea. Or I'd be laying on the floor writing. It just kind of changed. So we get stuck in this mindset of trying to be perfect. And really, writing isn't supposed to be perfect. And so however you need to get that out there, you just need to do it. Watch authors, like I believe, like Brene Brown. She's an amazing author, and she records herself. She has conversations with people, and she has people taking notes and writing as she speaks. So do whatever feels more natural to you, because then that's how you'll be able to step into that. Another thing for me was just the idea that I needed to own my voice. I could feel this resistance within me, like not to share my voice.
Yeah.
So then ask yourself, like, what is it about my voice that I don't feel worthy of sharing? And that's where I started. So for new authors, just start writing, let go of the feeling of needing to be perfect in your process, but then also allowing yourself to feel worthy of sharing these things, because I think there's not enough books in the world.
There isn't.
Yeah. And so just get started. And then if you need help, contact me. I can set you up with my amazing publisher, Lauren, and Burning Soul Press. And we can start you there. But it's more like, if you don't ask for help, or you're not telling people this is the area I'm struggling with in my process, then you're never going to get to the place you really want to be. And luckily, I was set up for that success in my own journey so that I could ask those questions.
Yeah. Also, are there going to be any other books? Are you going to take your time and come back down from life a little bit, and are you going to jump right into another book?
So I promised my husband Tyler that I'd wait to write my next book, but I'll start writing that in February. And I really want to talk more about how to step into your spiritual self and open your intuitiveness. So that's going to be my next book, but I have another collaboration coming out that will be released in January, but I'm not allowed to talk about it yet.
Oh, so also you were a co-author in another book.
Yeah, I was in a collaboration. It's called Gladversity, and it's with 40 other authors who were overcoming adversity in their life through gladness. And so I wrote my section on that of overcoming my abuse, but then also how I overcame it and where I'm at now. And so if you haven't checked that out, it's a beautiful book too.
Gladversity.
Gladversity.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Jacquelyn, if people want to order Healing the Survivors, 8 Steps to Whole Self-Healing, how do we go about that?
So you can order it on Amazon. There's a link in the description. And then if you want to do bulk orders, just contact me personally because I have a system in place for that. Because there's a lot of people who have been asking me. I'm in a bookstore in DC, Washington, DC now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I have a lot of things available for everyone.
Great. So is there anything that you would like to say before we say goodbye to our viewers?
Please check out my book. Just because everyone's going through something, everyone's had some type of trauma in their life, and we're all in the 8 steps. We're all in that process, no matter if you're at the end or the beginning, in the middle, but it's very healing. As I wrote this book, I had to go through the whole thing again. And I realized there's things I didn't heal as I went through it. And so what's beautiful is also I'm holding your hand as you're going through it as well, because I had to go into those things I didn't resolve that all the way. Mm-hmm. So if you're going through this now, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here for you guys as a support. You can join my Facebook, group called Healing the Survivors, which is just a small little community of people who are empowering each other as they're going through their healing. But feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or just need someone to talk to. I'm there for you. But just know that you have the healing within yourself. Stop looking outside of yourself to bring that to you, because once you look inside, all those tools are going to come out of you. That's going to help you empower yourself and heal properly.
That's beautiful, Jacquelyn. Thank you for joining us. And everyone, wish her a happy birthday. Woo-hoo! And I'm proud of this girl. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone who's watching. Please go ahead and go order on Amazon and let me know what you think. I'll be here today if you want to contact me and we can talk about things that you're going through. But thank you for watching and joining us, and we'll talk to you later.